Welcome back to Star Wars Sublight Into the Sublight After Show for Ahsoka Part 6, Far, Far Away. This episode literally expanded the Star Wars universe for the first time, with heroes and villains stepping foot inside an entirely new galaxy, where anything is possible. Let's dive into a quick recap and review of the episode before pointing out 8 details which caught my eye, including an interesting theory on how it all comes together in the final episodes. Part 6, Far, Far Away was a 49-minute episode directed by Jennifer Getzinger. That's about 40 minutes of brand new story if you cut out the recap and end credits. The Eye of Sion arrives at its destination outside the known galaxy, the planet of Peridea. Sabine is on board after deciding to give the coordinates to Baylan Skoll in exchange for a ride across the universe. But this episode reveals that Sabine is not an honored guest, instead she's held on board as his prisoner. On the surface of Peridea, Morgan Elsbeth meets with 3 Night Sisters, who summon the Imperial exile Grand Admiral Thrawn. His flagship, the Chimera, appears and Thrawn sets up a meeting with his unexpected guest, Sabine Wren. He reveals to Sabine that he and Ezra parted ways and allows her to search for him along the Peridian plains. But Thrawn has an ulterior motive for assisting in the pair's reunion.
You and your master will destroy them both.
Sabine fights her way to Ezra and discovers he's been living a hermit's life among the locals. Meanwhile, Baylan and Shin share a moment while tracking Sabine, and Baylan unveils his true mission in this new galaxy, a quest for hidden power, one beyond anything Thrawn or the Night Sisters could comprehend.
Something calls to me. Can't you hear it?
The Great Mothers warn Thrawn of Ahsoka's approach to Peridea, and he begins to set a trap for the incoming Jedi.
If a star whale approaches Peridea, destroy it with prejudice.
Ahsoka Part 6 is one of the largest expansions to the Star Wars saga in almost 10 years. New galaxies, new threats, new possibilities. I enjoyed seeing Thrawn and Ezra return after all these years. There were emotional moments, light-hearted adventure, and a sense that things are really ramping up as the series reaches its final 2 episodes. Let's take a look at some of the finer details found throughout Part 6, Far, Far Away. Some of them took a little research, so be sure to stick around to the end.
Show me what you found.
Ahsoka Part 6 reveals that Dathomirians are not native to the galaxy we're used to. In fact, they're the ancient travelers that Morgan Elsbeth alluded to in Part 2, the ones who built the henge on Cetos.
Whose work is it?
An ancient people from a distant galaxy.
The fact that Night Sisters come from another galaxy would explain their unique relationship with the Force, and in particular the dark side. They don't typically wield the Force like other Force users do, and they refer to it as magic. The concept of Night Sister magic was always a strange one, so it makes sense that they're strangers to the galaxy far, far away. Ahsoka Part 6 reveals there are more mothers like Talzin amongst the Dathomiri Night Sisters. We're introduced to 3 of them when the Eye of Sion reaches Peridea. The end credits name these 3 witches as Clothor, Lachesis, and Actropor. But just like other characters introduced in the series, their name holds meaning and clues to their intentions. Here's what I found after a quick bit of research.
Did you call for assistance?
These 3 great mothers are meant to resemble the 3 fates which are found in Greek mythology. The 3 fates were goddesses said to spin the thread of life, each with their own unique part to play. The Great Mother Clothor is played by Claudia Black. Clotho is the Greek goddess of fate who starts to spin the thread and begins a being's life. Great Mother Lachesis is played by Jane Edwina Seymour. She shares the name of a Greek goddess Lachesis, who in Greek mythology is said to be the one who measures the thread of life. And finally we have the Great Mother Actropor, who is played by Gerald Prescott Gallion. In Greek mythology, it's Atropos who's responsible for cutting the thread once it's been spun and measured, ending a person's life. And just like the thread of life in Greek mythology, these 3 witches honor something called the thread of destiny.
The thread of destiny demands it, Grand Admiral.
Ahsoka Part 6 puts a name to Jedi who were trained outside the normal confines of the Order with no temple to call their home. Baylan says that Ezra is from a line of Boken Jedi who were trained in the wild after the temple fell. That's a title which could apply to many Jedi who've featured in Star Wars stories set after Order 66. That list includes Ezra, Sabine, Luke Skywalker. Cal Kestis is taught by Ser Junta after the fall. Rey learns from Luke Skywalker after the second fall of the Jedi, and to an extent, Kanan Jarrus, who trained with Ahsoka during Star Wars Rebels and was knighted years after the fall of the Jedi Order.
Just remember your training.
If you're enjoying this breakdown so far, you'll love what's in the second half. But first, I wanted to invite you to join us here at Star Wars Sublight by subscribing today, if you haven't already. You'd be amazed at what you miss while traveling at light speed, so why not come out of hyperspace to explore the finer details of the galaxy far, far away? By joining us, you join the thousands already overanalyzing the galaxy together. So what are you waiting for? Sub to Sublight today. Ahsoka Part 6 reveals that the rebellion lives on outside the known galaxy.
This? You like this?
But the rebel symbol that the crustacean locals wear around their neck looks a little different to the traditional starbird of the Rebel Alliance. And that's a neat little detail that actually makes a lot of sense if Ezra fashioned those medallions for them. Ezra only knew the rebellion before the Battle of Scarif, where pockets of rebellion came together to form their alliance under the symbol we're used to seeing. That's why the crustaceans use another symbol, an older design created by Sabine. Imagine her shock when these strangers reveal her artwork around their necks. Speaking of Peridian locals, it's interesting that all indigenous Peridians are nomadic, and Baylan might have revealed why. Before Sabine sets out on her quest across the plains to find Ezra, she's warned by Captain Enoch that nomadic raiders plague the land. Ezra mentions that his crustacean friends don't stay in one place for long, and their entire camp looks like it's made up of caravans, ready to be packed up at a moment's notice. Even the Purrgil who lead us to Peridia don't stay put. They migrate between galaxies, and choose their final resting place above Peridia, creating a ring of bones, a great Purrgil graveyard.
The whales came here to die.
Baylan's skull may have hinted at why these locals don't stay in one place. He tells his apprentice Shin that there is a power greater than that of the Grand Admiral and even the Night Sister Great Mothers on Peridia, and he is determined to unleash it. It's possible that this power is known to the locals, and they understand the danger it poses, never staying put out of fear. If you look closely, you'll see that Ezra still has his scar from the duel with the Grand Inquisitor. It's a small detail that some fans would wonder about, but for those of us who watched Star Wars Rebels from the beginning, will recognize the story behind the scar.
Hello.
Ezra and the Grand Inquisitor fought aboard a Star Destroyer above Mustafar, and Ezra was knocked from a platform by the Inquisitor's spinning blades. Ezra was lucky to survive the attack and narrowly avoided losing his head. It's really cool to see some aspects of the character's origin shining through in live action. And even though he's now a bearded man in his 30s, Ezra's live action debut does look kind of familiar. You'll recall that at the end of Star Wars Rebels there were rumors already circulating that we would be getting a sequel show set after the fall of the Galactic Empire. Well, 5 years later it looks like that rumor came true, from a certain point of view. And back before we knew that the Ahsoka series was coming, many people used this fan-made image when talking about a potential story set after the events of Star Wars Rebels. That's why an older live-action Ezra looks so familiar to me, because he closely resembles the iconic piece of fan art. In the final scene of Ahsoka Part 6, Thrawn seeks the aid of the Grand Mothers on Peridia, and reveals to us that he has used their talents before. You've got to wonder what Thrawn used the dark magic for before, and what he's hauling into the Chimera, an operation which will take 3 days to complete. If you want to speculate for a moment, my theory is that he's hauling dead Night Sisters into the Chimera to serve as a vanguard in a new attack on the galaxy. It could make sense because the Night Sisters have used their dead sisters before, in the defense of Dathomir against General Grievous and his droid army during the Clone Wars. Dark magic is used to resurrect these warriors, just like Marok, who was fueled by Night Sister magic, which came spilling out of his corpse when he was defeated by Ahsoka on Cetos. My theory is that Marok's purpose was to show us what Night Sister magic could do in order to introduce resurrected Night Sisters in live action. The time has come for us to select our most valuable player in Ahsoka Part 6, and it's without a doubt gotta be Sabine Wren, for her determination in finding Ezra on Peridia. Sabine was imprisoned not once but twice since joining forces with the treacherous Baylan Skoll. She stared down the creepy Night Sisters and her old enemy Grand Admiral Thrawn. She rode a hound across the plains of Peridia and wiped out a bunch of raiders all by herself. Her tenacity and her drive to be reunited with Ezra makes Sabine our MVP for Part 6. And now the time has come for us to induct what could be one of the most significant Glupshittos of all time. The term Glupshitto is used to describe a returning character to the Star Wars saga, one which casual fans may not know but one that gets hardcore fans super excited. They usually have a backstory which can be found in other media, like a book, a game, or a comic series. This week's Glupshitto is actually the main character of the Ahsoka series precursor. It's Ezra Bridger. The journey to find Ezra may not mean much to people who aren't familiar with his disappearance, but you can learn all about him in Star Wars Rebels. but let me give you the short version. Ezra Bridger was an orphan living on the streets of Lothal under the reign of the Empire. He joined Sabine and Hera as the newest member of the Ghost Crew. He was apprenticed to Kanan Jarrus and instructed in the ways of the Force. After years of rebellion against the Galactic Empire, Ezra began the liberation of his homeworld, culminating in a sacrifice which took himself, Grand Admiral Thrawn, and the Empire's revered 7th Fleet out of the known galaxy. That's where he's been up until now, and that's also why he deserves to be inducted into the Glup Shadow Hall of Fame. Welcome, Ezra Bridger. And that's everything I caught in Ahsoka Part 6, Far Far Away. Did you manage to spot anything else? Let me know and leave your rating for this episode in the comments. Like this video if you learned something new, sub to Sublight so we can grow our army, and until the next one, remember that the Force will be with you. Always.